a short while ago, Broncos wide receiver Jerry Jeudy was walking by, and Steve called out to him.
I called out to him because on my podcast, Cut to It, I just talked about guys that have not showed up in a way or in a manner. And so the word that I've used to describe him in the past was a jag, just a guy.
Just a guy.
When I saw him, he's playing well. I wanted to say to him face to face, like, hey, I know I said some things in the past I probably shouldn't have, and I'm sorry. That's what I wanted to say to him. His response was, ninja, I don't mess with you. And it was a curse word. And so I was like, all right. And then he repeated it. So I'll say it again. I'm sorry that I said you were a jag, just a guy who's an average wide receiver they use a first-round pick on that isn't doing anything. I hope today that you actually show up in a way that you haven't showed up in the last couple of years since they drafted you. I'm sorry for saying that you're an average wide receiver that they eventually will move on. And when teams call me and asking, should they trade for you, I will say no, don't trade for Jerry Jeudy because he's mentally unable to handle constructive criticism.
The effort from our starting wide receivers. Shame on Jerry Jeudy for even thinking he can utter the name of Rod Smith in his tweets. Shame on you. You are not a professional, and you don't know what effort is. Jerry Jeudy would not be on my team. Jerry Jeudy couldn't play on the teams I played on if his life depended on it. He's not tough enough. He's not focused enough. He's not good enough. He's not anything enough. Could not play on our teams. Mike Shanahan would cut him tomorrow. I wouldn't have him on my team. You can have him. And that's the reason the Broncos stink.
He's a tier 3. Go back into the studio. I'm done now. Thank you.
Professionally, Jerry Jeudy just had one of the worst weeks you can have outside of off-the-field troubles. He got called out not only by a legend in his position, but also by another legend who played for his same organization. Then he followed that up with his worst game of the season, catching only 3 passes for 14 yards. And this was all while the legend who called him out and he surely grew up watching was sitting right next to the field. Apparently, Steve Smith has criticized Jeudy in the past. Presumably on his podcast, he called Jeudy a jag. For an NFL receiver, it's a pretty offensive acronym thrown on mediocre players. It stands for just a guy, meaning Steve Smith is calling Jeudy just an average receiver, but as a top 15 pick, he's expected to be more. Jeudy took offense to the comments, and while we can see from our perspective that the criticism Steve Smith gave, well, it absolutely holds weight. Jeudy's yet to put together a single 1,000-yard season. But to be fair, he came really close last year, but won't get a lot of credit because he did it on a terrible team. But other than that, he's been hurt or mediocre with a lot of lows, but his highs are just not high enough. And again, it's not like he's not had any production, but he hasn't produced to the level his draft positioning would warrant. Jeudy was the second receiver taken in the 2020 draft, and CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, and Michael Pittman, all drafted after Jeudy, have all been better pretty much from day one, and in the redraft, they'd all go over Jeudy without question. Then he's got college teammates who came in the league after him and have had what feels like instant success. Of course, that's with the exception of Henry Ruggs, who had an off-the-field incident that landed him in jail, but Devontae and Jalen Waddle landed on great offenses, while Judy's been stuck in Denver watching Russ burn down the kitchen. So Steve Smith's comments was accurate, but it's a little more to communication than just telling the truth. How information is delivered definitely matters, especially when it's not in a one-on-one conversation. Let's do a test. Let's see how well the audience knows themselves. How many of us would respond well to getting dragged by a dude who we more than likely grew up idolizing? Some of us might respond well, but most of us wouldn't, especially when the initial dragging is via public forum. Bro, Jeudy's human, and it's obvious he harbored some negative emotions based on Steve Smith's initial criticism. And if you're gonna kill the man for getting a little bit emotional, you cannot have the double standard when it comes to Steve Smith. Look, I get where Jeudy's coming from. It's like Erykah Badu said, I'm an artist, it's my craft, and I'm sensitive about my shit. And a lot of us probably have a little bit or a lot of that as well. But you gotta have this one thing to help you balance it out. So if you wanna have the right to act all sensitive about your stuff, but you still want a good outcome and not implode due to emotions, deep down in your heart, you have the need to be good. Not just good, but as good as you can be. And it'll be an internal battle, but in order to do that, to be as good as you can be, you're gonna have to put emotions aside. Redirect that energy and accept the criticism, especially from a literal expert in your field. I know it hurt your feelings when the great Steve Smith called you a jag. I get it, it's reasonable. Probably hurt your pride too. And getting mad about that is fine, bro. That is step one. But step two is to look in the mirror and say, does he have a point? What have I done in this league to cement myself as a number one or as anything beyond just a solid wide receiver? If the answer is nothing, you don't have the right to be upset. Well, you have the right to be upset, but just not at Steve Smith, because all he did was gave you an unbiased review, and if you really want to be great, then that should be helpful. Not taking the human side out of it, it's gonna hurt your feelings and it's gonna hurt your pride, but again, redirect the energy. Put it on the field. Put it in the weight room, put it in film study. Take that energy and put it somewhere productive. Because if you keep doing this, the next contract you sign will be for celebrity boxing. And be real with yourself. Being called the average wide receiver wouldn't sting so much unless you know you're not playing to your potential. It's kind of like the other week when the Drake album dropped and he flipped out on Joe Budden for giving an honest review. And you can read into it a million ways, but I kind of fell in the camp that criticism must have really hit home. Because when it does, it usually triggers a volatile response. And I'm going to talk about the situation, the organization, and the quarterback, because all that plays a role, and I'm going to get to that in a second. Now, in defense of Jeudy, Steve Smith came at him first. And while he's being honest about his game, and I get that, I do. But if you start off the relationship basically choosing violence, you don't really get to decide when the relationship turns friendly. That said, it was absolutely in Jeudy's best interest to accept the olive branch, but I felt he let his pride stop him from making the move that would have benefited him the most. Having that dude in your corner would help you more than it would help him, and then you holding that grudge is gonna hurt you more than it hurts him. He's already cemented. You still trying to build your career, and if you grew up watching football, you know that's his personality. He ain't single you out. He talk about everybody the same way, and he gonna give you honest critique, raw and uncut. Now the crazy thing is, even though the Steve Smith thing went viral, it wasn't even the worst attack Jeudy got hit with last week. 3-time Super Bowl champion, with 2 of those being with the Broncos, respected TV and radio personality, and member of the Broncos 50th anniversary team, Mark Sarif went in on Jeudy. And just for good measure, he threw Sutton in there as well.
The effort from our starting wide receivers. Shame on Jerry Jeudy for even thinking he can utter the name of Rod Smith in his tweets. Shame on you. You are not a professional, and you don't know what effort is. Your quarterback's under duress. You're locked up. Somebody locks you up in man coverage on an underneath route, and you call it trotting would be an insult to trot. You just quit. You gave up, said, well, the ball's not coming to me. Hey, you're a lantern holder. Shining a light on Russ. Hey, Russ, you're under duress. I hope it works out for you, because I'm not going to do anything to bail your ass out. Good luck with that. Oh, a sack. Weird. Cortland Sutton not coming back to the ball. Neither of those 2 guys would play for me. I would cut both of those guys. They would not play. Jerry Jeudy would not be on my team. Jerry Jeudy couldn't play on the teams I played on if his life depended on it. He's not tough enough. He's not focused enough. He's not good enough. He's not anything enough. Could not play on our teams. Mike Shanahan would cut him tomorrow. I wouldn't have him on my team. You can have him. And that's the reason the Broncos stink.
Bro, when they question your effort, saying that you're not a pro, that right there is the type of stuff that's hard to come back from. Bro, he doesn't lack talent, but those who are watching close are saying that they don't believe he's putting his best efforts on the field. Now, as far as Jeudy is concerned, bro, I know these dudes are professionals. I know the dudes are millionaires. The dude's still just 24. And while some of the players who come in the league are more mature than others, it's completely fair to compare them to their contemporaries, but I think you should also compare them to yourself. Compare them to your friends, your nephews, your cousins, whoever you've known around that age. And if you, let's say, 28 or older now, you should be able to look at your 24-year-old self and see a big difference, while still acknowledging that when it comes to this maturity, if you're like me, you recognize you got a long way to go. So for Jeudy, he's already gotten thrashed by Mark Sarif on what I've heard described as the Denver sports show. Like, this is a big show. You got a Super Bowl champion talking Broncos every day on the radio. Now keep in mind, this happened earlier in the week before the whole Steve Smith situation popped off. So he thrashes Jeudy. Then Jeudy walks out on the field and Steve Smith Sr. is just sitting right there, who again has called Jerry Jeudy out in the past. Jeudy reads the situation wrong and goes into defense mode. I guess my point is, you can understand where he went wrong, but for Judy's personality, the situation he was in was not an easy one. So I just kind of want to throw some understanding his way for that, because we're reviewing the film now, but he still ran the wrong route. At some point, being called called out like this gotta trigger something in him. You can try to be cool and put on your unbothered face, but if you're not bothered by this, then maybe that's the problem. I know things haven't gone perfect for dude, man. He's kind of had a rough time, but at this point ain't nobody gonna get his career back on track but him. Now it's not like dude ain't got some reason to be a little bit disheveled, cause since he been in the league, bro, the Broncos have been terrible. I don't think I can say he's ever had competent quarterback play, cause watching their offense the past few years has been its own form of torture, especially since the NFL loved throwing them on in prime time, and they always do it before week 7. See, before week 7 you can't flex the damn game, so you have no other choice. You just stuck watching them. When you was a laughingstock last year, get 70 dropped on you this year, signed a big money quarterback who ended up being a dud, then you lose to your old coach who your new coach said did the worst coaching job in history, going the extra mile just starts to feel pointless, and that losing mentality can affect the whole team. Mark Sarif got on to Jeudy for quitting on plays, doing scramble drills, and he's absolutely right. There's no arguing that. But I wonder if it would look different if he played for a quarterback who could occasionally reward that extra effort. Or is he going to be one of those guys more like a Chase Claypool type, who just goes in the tank every single time he faces adversity? Everything hasn't gone his way, and it's not all on him, but if he controlled what he could control, it would have never gotten this bad. But a trade should be looming for Jeudy pretty soon, and where he lands will play a huge role in his career going forward. But regardless to which team he lands on, he's gonna have to get his mind right first, you know what I'm saying? Cause all that cool stuff, it ain't really all that cool when a top 15 pick can't get a decent second contract. Ideally, he'll get to a receiver room with some vets who can maybe take dude under their wing and give him some game that he's been missing, which in his own abrasive way, Steve Smith tried to do, but Jeudy wasn't receptive to the criticism, took it personal, and held a grudge. I guess the moral of the story is that sometimes the things that really cut the deepest and hurt our pride the most turns out to be the thing we needed all along.